Hello friends. So today we are going to discuss about the React component lifecycle. So every React component have basically three lifecycle phases. So in all these phases, like even whether it's a class-based component or a function-based component, every function has basically three life cycles. uh, First phase is the mounting phase. Then comes the updating phase. So there is any changes happens to our component. We click on some button and we change some state. So that phase is called as the updating phase. In the first phase, when the component is rendered into the screen, into the DOM, that is called as mounting phase. Then we change something that is called the updating stage. And then in the last stage, we call it as an unmounting stage. So whenever a component is removed from the DOM, that stage is called as unmounting stage. So in all these phases, basically, there are multiple methods comes in. Those methods are only applicable to for class-based components, not to the functional components. In the functional components, to achieve the similar feature, we use hooks, and in the class-based component, we have a different methods for every phases of the component lifecycle. So in the today's video, we are going to discuss all these methods only, specifically for the class-based components. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's start with the mounting phase. In the mounting phase, the first method which is getting called is the constructor. Constructor is the method. If let's see in the normal concepts also, whenever we say class, we create an object of it, and then the constructor is getting called. So here also first method is getting called is constructor. In the constructor, we are also set all the default values, constant values, or a state object also we can set over here. The constructor is used for that, and we should also call the parent component, the component class constructor also. Then after that, the second method which is getting called is the get data state from props. So this method basically changes, we can modify our state object based on our props which are passed from the parent component. Based on those value, we can modify our state object, and that will be returned back. Okay. Then the render method is getting called. So render method is basically the mandatory method. We have to define it. All the other methods are, if we define it, then only it will be get called. If we don't define it, those will not get called. But render method is, it's a mandatory method, and it contains a JSX code, so it returns just a UI. Then after that, componentDidMount method is getting called. So once our component is rendered onto the DOM, so after that, or if we want to do any other operations after the DOM, like our UI is render. If you want to do operations after that, so that operations we can do in the componentDidMount method. Let's say if I want to do a set timeout function or anything like that, those operations I can do in the componentDidMount method. Then comes our second phase, that is called as the updating phase. In the updating phase, the first method which is getting called is the get data state from props. So, like this method was also available into the first phase, that is the initialization phase or mounting phase. And in the updating phase also, if you click on some button or if you try to change something, so this method is getting called first. Then then after that, the method which is getting called is a should component update. So here we can decide whether we want to re-render or update our component or not. So whether we want to re-render our component or not. If you don't want to re-render, then we can just return the false. And if you want to render it, means if based on some conditions, if else we can put it, we can decide whether to re-render or not. Then comes our third method, that is a render method. This is same again. This is a mandatory method and it contains a JSX code. Okay. Then our fourth method comes is the get snapshot before update. So before update, whatever our state object have the values or the props, previous props value or previous state values, those value we get over here and we can do operations according on top of that. Okay. Then our the last method which is getting called is the component because this is the method like that our component is updated now, and we can do any other operations if you want to do after the update. So that is the thing. In the last phase, that is the unmounting phase, we have only one method, that is the component will unmount. This method is getting called when our component is supposed to be destroyed or removed from the DOM. At that phase, this method is getting called. So we'll see one by one all these methods and how this works, what we can do over there. So let's get started. Okay, so now here I'm back to my Visual Studio, and here the last time we have created two components for the product and product details. So here our product component is basically a class-based component, so we are going to test over all the lifecycle methods here only, as this is a class-based component, and this product component is getting got called in app component. So we have app component, and if you just check the UI looks like this. So let's just start and we check the methods. So first of all, the first method which we serve in the mounting stage, that is the constructor, which is getting called. If you now just write the constructor and if you just check, so it gives an error that super must be called. So what does super does? It's just call the React.component class constructor. So that because we are extending to the React.component. So we should ideally call, if we are writing the constructor, we should call the constructor of that. Okay. So for that, what we are doing, first of all, we'll take the input as props to this particular constructor. So whatever the props which are going to be passed to this component are getting taken as an input parameter to the constructor. And those same props we are going to pass to the super. So that is a React component, React.component class. And now here we can set the state object. So I'll just say I can initialize the state object. I can say, so here I'll say my color equal to red. Okay. So here what we have done, we have set the state object over here, and now we are going to use it in the component. So I'll just add the CSS over here. For that, I'll say color, that is font color I'm going to set. I'll say this dot state dot my color. So that's going to change my font color in both the components. Or the second method which comes into the mounting phase, that is the derive get derived state from props. And here we have two parameters, props and state. Okay. According to the props, we can change the state object. So we should return the state object over here. So if you just write like this, it gives an error that we should write this method as static. So what we'll do, we will just add a static keyword over here, and now it's just working fine. Now here we can return the new state object which is going to be changed. Okay, so I'll say my color, and I'll say depending upon the props. So I'll say props. If I'm, let's say I'm passing a color prop, then I will check color prop. If color prop is present, props.color is present, then just take that. Else, just take the red color. So let's just pass the color. So if for the first component, like first component, I'm passing the red color, sorry, yellow color, because red is already there. So for the first, I passed color prop, and for the second, I have not passed. So if you check here, first component is changed, that it has yellow color now because we have passed the yellow over here. So it has yellow, and the second one remained as it is. So this thing we can check from here and we can decide over here, and we can, so that it returns a new state object. The third method is going to be get called is render. So after this method, all the JSX code is getting rendered, and that is rendered into the DOM. Okay, so UI is rendered. Now after that, fourth method is getting called is that component did mount. So in this method, whatever the operations we want to do after our component is rendered or our UI is rendered, so maybe a set timeout I want to do. So let's say I'm writing a set timeout method. Inside that I'm passing an arrow function. And here I'll say 2 seconds. So after 2 seconds, I want to perform some operation. So what operations I'm going to do? I'm going to do a set state, let's say, and I'm going to change my color to green. Okay. So let's try like this. If you just now wait, it will not change. Why it will not change? Because once we have changed the state object, our component goes into the updating phase, and once it goes into the updating phase, the first method which is going to be get called is the get data state from prop. So again, it will decide the state object from the props, and it will return the same thing. For that reason, what I'm going to do, I'll just comment this code out. So I'll just comment this method so that we can see our effect. So now if you just check, if you wait for 2 seconds, it changed to the green color. That's how our componentDidMount method is getting called. Okay, now the method which comes in this, now if you talk about the updating phase, in the updating phase, the first method is which is get called, as we have seen, that is the get derived state props. After that, the method which is getting called is a should component update. So if we now check, as we have seen after 2 seconds, our color is getting changed. Now we'll write the should component update method. In here, if I just return false, we should ideally return true and false over here. If I just return false, after 2 seconds, it will not change the color, because even I have changed the color in the component date mount after 2 seconds. Set timeout. I'm saying this dot state. It goes to the updating phase. In the updating phase, it decides calls a should component update method, and here it sees that it is returning false. So do not re-render the component again. So here we can write the logic. We can check maybe some few other old parameters and new parameters, and then we can decide whether we should re-render a component or not. So that we can do over here. But if I just return true over here for that, for now, our component will be get re-rendered. So as you can see, after 2 seconds, it is changing the color again. Okay, so that's how our should component update method is getting called. So after should component update, again it's render method. So that is the always mandatory method. Okay, after the should component update method, there is a get snapshot before update method is there, which is getting called. So let's just see that. Now let's just write the get snapshot before update method. So what we are going to get over here is the previous props and previous state. Okay, so here what we can do, either we can do some operations or just want to check what were the previous props and previous states. And if you want to do any operation based on that, or maybe if you just want to display those things, so that also we can do over here. So maybe I'll just show you what I'll do. I'll just add a div before this image tag for the showing purpose, and I'll say it as id equals to div1 and 1. Okay. So now here I'll say, let's say like this, and I will say document dot get element by id div1 dot inner html equals to props before update. That is previous props, or maybe I can just console.log it also here. I'll just say console.log previous props, comma previous, so that will be more readable. Previous state. Okay, now just remove this. I'll just remove this thing. I don't need this anymore. And now if we just go here, let's just open the console and refresh it back. Okay, so now it's returning the previous props and previous states. Here you can see what were the previous props, product, all these things are there. Alt tag, description, image, price, title, and the previous state, if you check, that is the red. It contains the my color as red, because after 2 seconds the set time mode got called and our state is changed. So that is the color is green now, but what was previously, it was red. So that's what we can check here in the state object. here it is rendered for two times because there are two components we have, means two times we have rendered. So that we can check. Here we have passed yellow for this first t-shirt product. Okay. So here we can say yellow and the state object also. So that's how we can check the previous state and previous crops. The get snapshot before update. So after that, like what is the method which is getting called? So what we have seen in the updating phase, first method is get derived state from props, then should component update, then render, then get snapshot before update. After that, the component did update. This method is getting called. And here also we can do the same thing. We can means like after our DOM is updated, our component is rendered onto the DOM. If you want to perform some operations, that we can do in this particular method. So so that way we can check. I'll just put a console.log that this method is got called. So just save it and refresh now. Okay, now you can see it's written in two times because there are two components we have. So that's why it is saying two. So that's how we can do any operations in the component data update. Maybe same as what we have done in the component did mount, or maybe any other operations, whatever you want to do. Now the last phase which comes is the unmounting phase. In the unmounting phase, we have one method that is component will unmount. That method says that now this component is going to be destroyed. So how we will check this? So let's just I'll just write component will unmount. Okay, and here I will say console.log component will unmount. So if you check this to how we will verify this particular method, for that what we have to do, we have to remove this component from the DOM. And how we will do that? So we'll go with the app.component and maybe I'll just add a button at the bottom, or maybe after this product, I'll just add a button, hide above. Okay, so I'll just hide this particular first product component. Okay, on click of this, let's just write a state object here. State object means I'll say this is as this is a functional component, so we'll just use a hook hide, comma set hide equals to use state false. Okay, if or if you can say vice versa, show and set show. Here I'll say true. So by default, we are going to show the component. So what I will do, I'll just say show and just close this bracket. So if our show variable is true, then only we are going to just display this component. Okay, else it is going to get destroyed. So on click of this button, we are going to write on click event and we will write arrow function. Here will say set show equals to false. Okay, now just check, re-render again. We have the hide button now. I just clear the console and just click on the hide. Now you can see the component will unmount method is got called. So this is getting called before the component is going to be unmount from the DOM. So here we can do any operations if you want to remove some memory or any other operations if you want to before the component is getting destroyed or removed from the DOM. So we can do that over here. So all these are methods are the lifecycle methods of the React component. Basically the class-based component we can say. So to achieve the similar features uh, into the functional components, we have multiple hooks. into the functional components, one of the most famous hook is use effect hook. So using that, we can achieve these features into the functional components. Okay, so that's it for today. And if you just like this video, please hit the like button, share this video with others, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.